video, I'm going to be talking about all of the pros and cons of joining Teach for America. Just as a disclaimer, Teach for America is super open about giving feedback, and I really enjoyed my experience. So if you're part of Teach for America and you're watching this video, please take some of the feedback that I have to heart, because I also want the organization to improve as a whole. Okay, a little bit about me. I completed the core in 2020 in Houston, Texas. I taught high school English at a pretty big public school in Houston for the 2 years of my core commitment, and then I moved to Washington, D.C. and taught at a pretty small charter school in the area. And I actually still teach. This is my 5th year of teaching, so I'm someone that stayed in the classroom after TFA and has definitely gotten exposed to a lot of different parts of the education system. Okay, so let's get into the pros and the cons. Okay, my very first pro is that the networking opportunities in Teach for America are plentiful. It's a pretty big organization and there's a lot of alum at this point, and the organization really does overall have a vibe of wanting to help its core members professionally, not just if they want to stay in the classroom. So during TFA, you're going to have a coach, and that coach is going to work with you over the course of your core commitment to figure out career aspirations, and if they're able to, they'll set you up with people that are in a similar career or that have taken those steps already. There are career panels where there's basically a Zoom call and they have TFA alum that are in that industry come in and give advice. They're really good about connecting one-on-one. It's overall an environment that is really, really supportive to fostering professional development and growth, especially if you're interested in moving outside of the classroom. Okay, that leads into the first con, which is that you're oftentimes thrown into communities and cultures in TFA that you've never experienced before. This was kind of the case for me. I had never visited Houston before I moved there. It was my first choice, which was a bold part on college senior me. But I had never been to Houston before. I got placed in the east side of Houston. I had never been there before, didn't know anything about the culture, and kind of got thrown in at a pretty vulnerable time because it was COVID, but definitely overall a pretty complex community and organization. And it was really, really difficult when I first got to my placement school to figure out what that community needed and what my role was in helping that community and that organization. And this is one of the biggest flaws in the TFA model, is that a lot of people move from wherever they went to school or where they live to where their placement region is. So you add on the stress of moving to a new place and having to immediately be thrown into a complex community. And it's really difficult, and a lot of core members really struggle with it. I know that I did. Okay, my next pro is that TFA does a lot to support teachers their first year, which is also usually their first year in the core. So obviously your first year of teaching is incredibly difficult, and most of the time you will not know what is going on at all. But TFA does a really good job of supporting people through that transition and through that difficult time. Like I mentioned already, you have a coach with TFA, and that coach is super helpful as long as you mesh with them. That coach is super helpful at just supporting you and getting you what you need. TFA has both mandatory and optional professional development sessions, which can really help you foster your skills. TFA is also just cool because, going back to the networking opportunity, it's a whole group of people, and a lot of them, the core members in your class, are going to be going through the same thing at the same time. So it's awesome to like bounce ideas off of each other and just commiserate sometimes after a challenging day or week. The two coaches that I had during my time at TFA, because I had a different coach my second year versus my first year, both of them were so fabulous. Some of the best leaders and representations of leadership I have ever encountered, and they were so helpful at supporting me through challenging times. And it's also just really nice your first year of teaching knowing that you have someone in your corner, and that's what my TFA coaches were. Okay, the second con for TFA is a big one, and it is that the 2-year commitment essentially opens a revolving door where teachers and core members only stay for the 2-year commitment and then leave. And oftentimes that always puts new and inexperienced teachers in communities and school districts that need experienced teachers the most. So this is a pretty common criticism of the organization, and it's definitely not unfounded. The idea is that once you serve your 2 years with TFA, you peace out, go on and do whatever else you want to do, whatever else your career aspirations are. And I will say this does happen frequently. Like, TFA does not necessarily encourage you to stay in education after your time in the Corps is up. The reasoning behind that is that education equity is such a large issue that it's gonna need people that are aware of the problem in all sectors. So the idea is that you take what you learn in TFA and you go out into the world, and then you always advocate for those communities and for those schools and for those students that need it. And that is a wonderful, wonderful message. However, there is some complications with the revolving door. So I haven't left, obviously I'm still in education, but most of the people that I did TFA with have moved on into other careers. And I personally, just having worked in public schools for the past 4 years, have seen this, but I don't think it's necessarily a Teach for America specific problem. There is very high teacher turnover in public schools. Very, very high. And it definitely is a TFA specific issue because it's happening with TFA Corps members, but it's also just an American school system issue. There's an incredibly high turnover rate amongst everyone. And I don't necessarily know how exactly TFA should fix this and how they should, I don't know, support Corps members more or come up with different strategies to keep teachers in the classroom after their 2-year commitment. But it's definitely a valid criticism. And it is something to think about when you think about all these different communities that have Corps members in them. Okay, my third pro for TFA is that it's really helpful to have voices and people outside of your school district and outside of your school campus to talk to about the wild things that are happening at your school. So with Teach for America, you get placed at a school, and sometimes that school will have other Corps members and sometimes it won't. So for example, my first year of TFA, I got placed at a school where there were no other Corps members, or at least there were no other active Corps members. There might have been alum. And then my second year of TFA, I was at the same school and they brought in 2 Corps members. So it really depends on the school and on just the different needs of the school and the gaps in hiring. But you might not necessarily get another TFA Corps member at your school. And especially if that is the case, it's really important and helpful to have opinions and experiences of people that are outside of your school. I feel so strongly about this. Sometimes working at a school can feel like an isolated little bubble in the campus, and it's really difficult to see outside of that campus. But it's really helpful to see what other schools are doing, especially schools within and without the district. It's really helpful to see what other schools and districts are doing, and it's really helpful to talk to other TFA Corps members because you get more experience and you get more perspective. All the schools are different, every school is run differently, and it can be really helpful to see and to talk to other Corps members. So that was a huge pro for me, being able to talk to people outside of my school, get some perspective, see how different things are run, because not only are you getting that perspective, you're also learning more about school organization and the setup and the hierarchy at schools, which is something that I'm really interested in. Okay, con number 3 is one that I know Teach for America is very aware of and has been doing their best to work through, and that is that the training that you do in the summer, the pre-service, when I was doing TFA it was called Institute, whatever you call it, the pre-service work is quite bad. Mic drop, that's all I'm gonna say. No, I'm kidding. Let me explain a little bit. So disclaimer, like, nothing can compare to your first year of teaching. You're gonna go in and you can do all the training in the world, but there is no learning quite like actually being in the classroom in your first year of teaching. With that being said, TFA does not do the best job of preparing teachers to join the classroom. And my experience is a little different because I did my pre-service work during summer of 2020. It was totally virtual, it was COVID, so mine looked a little different, but I've heard from other Corps members that it's just not super effective. A lot of the times it's some pedagogy work, and then you do some sort of work with tutoring students or doing summer school in a local district, and it's just not super effective because it's only a month and they go over a lot of different practices, but that doesn't necessarily compensate for having like a master's in education or having a degree in education, which they don't require. Like I mentioned earlier, I do find the support that you receive during the school year to be a lot more helpful than the summer training. And TFA, the way they do it is that throughout the course of the whole year, you do get support and one-on-one and different PD sessions. And I found that to be super supportive because by that point I was in the classroom and I knew what my struggles were and I knew what my areas of improvement were. But in the summer, I had no idea. And in the summer, I had a really hard time picturing what my classroom would look like. And the training, in my opinion, also knowing that it was a weird year, just didn't prepare me too much. I can't think of a single thing 5 years in that I learned from that training that I still use. And this is also a good time to pause and mention that even if you join TFA, you do need to be certified to teach in that state. So it's gonna look different for every single state. I taught in Houston, so I was getting certified to teach in Texas. And the way that that looked is my first year teaching, which was also my first year of TFA, I had a coach and a program that would walk me through and essentially get me certified. And it looked like I had to take a week-long training in the summer, and then every month, someone from my certification program would come to my school, watch me teach, give me feedback, and every month I would have like a 4 or 5 hour PD session on Saturdays. And over the course of the whole year, the person who watched me teach and coached me basically determined if I would get my certification or not. I also had to take a bunch of different tests. But that will look different for each and every state. And the important part about that is that TFA will walk you through all of that. You don't have to do independent research on your own. In order to get certified in the state, TFA will help you understand what to do. It is important to note though that my certification cost $4,000. So there was a couple $100s taken out of my paycheck my whole first year of teaching. And that is a non-negotiable. It's something that you have to do for Teach for America. And on the Teach for America website, they list out certification costs. I had friends that taught in other states where the certification cost was free because that state needed teachers so much, but in Texas it was $4,000. In other states it was more or less expensive, and those numbers probably change. So when you're looking at different TFA regions, I didn't know what the certification cost meant, so I kind of ignored it, but make sure you pay attention to that too because that is money that you will be expected to pay. Okay, pro number 4 is that Teach for America is pretty well known and it looks very good on a resume. I am still in education, so obviously Teach for America looks good on a resume because it's teacher experience, but I have had TFA friends that have gone on into different professions and they have stated that TFA looks really good on a resume. A lot of different organizations or upper schools want to see TFA or organizations like TFA. So if you are interested in something else and you're using TFA as kind of like a gap year program, it does look very strong on a resume. It is a pretty reputable program. Okay, 4th con is that there's a lot of additional work on top of your commitments at school. You're getting certified, that's 5 hours on a Saturday, once a month. You also have meetings with your coach. You also have TFA specific professional development sessions. You also have all the task of being a first year teacher, and it's a lot. There is a lot of work that goes into your first year of teaching, especially your first year of Teach for America, and it's definitely overwhelming at times, and it definitely at times feels like there's no free time at all because you're always working, and that is a big con of Teach for America as a whole, and a lot of the things they can't cut out because they're legally required to certify you to teach. But in full transparency, so you know what you're signing up for, it is pretty overwhelming at times. And it gets a lot better your second year, and it gets a lot better towards the end of your first year. And it is all really valuable skills because like I said, you learn how to teach by teaching, but it can be pretty challenging. And I feel as if I would be doing you a disservice if I did not mention that. Okay, and my final pro, ending this video on a pro, is that Teach for America does a really good job of celebrating you. I think teachers as a whole are not given nearly the credit and admiration that they deserve, and Teach for America, I think, is doing a really good job of trying to change that narrative. Teachers are celebrated all the time, teachers are respected all the time. In the organization, the needs of the core members definitely come first, and we are celebrated so much, reminded every single day how important we are, and that community and that sense of teaching being a really hard profession that also needs to be super respected is prevalent in my experience in everything that Teach for America does. And I appreciate the organization so much because it is calling to light how important teachers are and how they should be celebrated as such. So like I said at the beginning, I had an incredibly positive Teach for America experience. I miss TFA. I wish sometimes that I could go back and do it again because the support is just unmatched. And now I'm 3 years out of TFA, still teaching. Feel sometimes a little bit alone because the support from TFA was so nice. But there's also a lot of alumni opportunities, and after the core you can definitely get involved in those. Teach for America, in my opinion, is an awesome organization that is doing a lot, but it's definitely not without flaws. And it's definitely not without valid criticisms and ways that it can improve. So my hope with this video is that we are continuing some conversations about how to make an organization that I really love even better in the future. And if you're watching this and you're not sure about Teach for America, or if you have any additional questions, it's pretty easy to get assigned someone that you can talk to. You can also talk to me, leave me a comment with your questions below, and I will be happy and overjoyed to answer. I love talking about teaching, and I love talking about TFA. Otherwise, have a great rest of your week. I hope it is an awesome adventure. Bye.